So the first topic that I'm going to cover is the commitment point. So for example, you will see on the board, on the screen, you will see a sprint board, a very simple sprint board. You have a sprint backlog. You have just finished a sprint planning meeting. You have created a sprint backlog, a complete sprint backlog that you have to complete in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks. You have just started. You have nothing in progress. You have nothing done. Right? Your commitment point is all the sprint backlog. The entire sprint backlog that you have completed, you have planned in a sprint, that is something that you are expected to, complete. You move forward, you completed some of your Scrum, and then you finished some of the items, some are in progress. There are different types of work that you have, in your Scrum. You move further down the line, and you are mostly 50% above the timeline, and you see a high priority, ticket come in. This high priority ticket is something that you have to take into progress. Right? There is some team that is working with you. Some of your team members might have to stop some work and go to the high priority tickets, or maybe 2 or 3 of the people of your team might have to do this high priority ticket. But you can see like done is still waiting to be done. This is one of the syndromes that we have. We define an iteration, let's say a sprint of 2 weeks. Most of the work will go towards the end and then get finished, then gets done. Right? We keep on starting the work, but we know that our sprint review is at the end of the second week. So we try to finish it only when it is approaching that date. And even it goes towards the high priority ones. Well, you went further ahead. You completed most of the work. And congratulations, you have done high priority work also. But some of the work is difficult, complex. You started, could not finish it. You have something blocked, maybe due to a dependency, due to a high critical bug, that also you couldn't complete. Right? Some of the tickets that you had in your sprint to do, they're unclear. So you couldn't pick them. Though you wanted to do it, of course, you wanted to do entire sprint backlog, but you couldn't. Because there are certain uncertainties. The plan that you prepared in the sprint backlog is based on certain assumptions. There's still some uncertainty. So all the commitment that you did at the start of the sprint is something goes to a spillover. Some points to remember. Capacity can change even when you have asked all your team members for the leave plans. Right? You might ask them, how does your 2 weeks look like? You ask them for the planned leave plans. But still you will have ad hoc leaves. You will still have sick leaves. Maybe hangovers, breakups. You don't know. Blockers come unannounced. Dependencies may get unearned. Technically, any of the stories can become complex. Maybe environments are down. Nobody can help. There will still be a spillover. Even if you do better planning, then also there will be a spillover. What are these? What are these called? Capacity, blockers, dependencies, technical complexity, environmental availability. What are these called? Variations. How do you handle them? Can you ask people to eat healthy so they don't fall sick? Can you introduce a new pay policy for ad hoc leaves? So that your teams is available, as for the capacity they have planned, so that you don't have a spillover because of resource shortage or people shortage. Or can you ask your CEO to help with the high priority? We don't expect any high priority to come as sprint backlog. This is because sprint backlog is governed by the dev team. And we have done whatever we had to do. Or if make sure all the dependencies are identified in the beginning itself, else you will fire people. Blockers. Pretend to be working on something that is blocked. A zero tolerance Scrum. Or read a book on anti-patterns or zombie Scrum, and find out like, oh, yes, this was mentioned in the, this anti-pattern. We should try to remove it. Apply various models of thinking. Or people who are calling a work complex, tell them you are lazy. Stop complaining. Do something to handle these variations. Accept that these are the variations, and the people who have gone through the KMP class, they will know this slide, that there are two kinds of variations, common cause and the special cause. Common cause, and these all are common cause variations. Believe me. If you don't believe me, then read this. This is a proven fact. It has been estimated that 85 to 94% of the problems a company faces or your team faces are due to common causes. Only 6 to 15% are due to special causes. So if you blame problems on people, you are at least 85% of the time you're wrong. So how will you handle those? A very simple solution, apply Kanban. Defer commitment. Your sprint backlog is not your commitment. Still, defer it. How will you do that? This will help you to stop chewing more than what you can eat. Understand your capacity and then do your work. And how will you do that? So if you look at this slide, there's a sprint backlog, which is planned. I have introduced one more column in this to do. In progress and done remains the same as it is. So introduce a column after the sprint backlog and then call it a commitment point. So now your commitment point has shifted from the sprint planning, the planned backlog that you had, from the step ahead. You will only pick up those items in to do which you can do based on your current capacity. If you have 3 people in the team, you have 3 in progress. You can see you have pulled up 4 more. You are committing that we will complete 7 based on our current visibility of the work. There are few items in sprint backlog, they are queued. You have not committed them yet. Introduce a commitment point into your sprint. Don't overburden people. Looks like someone is playing with my slides. Don't overburden people. Give them time to think and innovate. If you start pushing the work, keep on pushing the work on them, they will keep on, working like donkeys, Not that I'm blaming donkeys, but, without thinking how you can improve your current processes. So if you try to complete all this sprint backlog and push them to work over time, they won't improve your process. To improve your process, you have to give them space. And how you can give them space? When you can limit the work. How can you limit the work? By deferring the commitment. Only chewing what you can eat. Don't overdo it. Overcommitment, someone wrote. Better planning. You can't plan based on something which has, which is very far. 2 weeks. It's a huge, Plan based on the current capacity. You don't know who can fall sick. Don't overburden people. Start finishing, stop starting. Don't pick up more work in progress until you have completed the ones that you are working upon. Because you don't have to finish the entire sprint backlog. Now, after you have put the commitment point, you are not finishing the entire sprint backlog. You're only finishing the ones that you have pulled in to do. That is the agreement that you have to take with your teams. And that, my dear, will kind of ease your life. You just have to set the expectation, that policy, that you will only pull out that work which you can finish, and this is based on the current capacity of today. Maybe you completed the in progress task after 3 days, but not 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance. That is one way of implementing the Kanban principle of deferring commitment. And if you introduce the first commitment point after the sprint backlog, you would be able to get most of the improvement, in controlling the spillovers and setting up the priorities with your product. Second topic. Now you have introduced the commitment, but you need to visualize also where is your work. There could be a delay because this person is sick. So for visualization, I have another webinar coming up, that will tell you like what is the right approach, or how will you design the right board for Kanban or Scrum. Means Scrum when you're using Kanban. What are the important points that you have to take care of? How can you define your columns? How can you define your swim lanes? How can you use your most popular tool, Jira? The other tools, Kanbanize, maybe Azure DevOps. I can showcase that to you, like how I did it, and how can you create the dashboards, in a way that you focus on the concept of start, finishing, stop, starting, and the commitment point. This commitment point that you introduced here. So stay tuned. You'll get those webinar links, as soon as we launch it. So coming back to the commitment point. Now, while you are working on the 3 progress items, one person falls sick, it is not being done. Then you can see 3 people in, one person is working on some of the scope item, which has become difficult. One person is, lucky enough not to get any other complexity. What will you do? You have still not picked up this work. It is still lying in the sprint backlog. You have only committed for these 4. You might want to help this person to complete this difficult task first, rather than these 2 people pulling up the other work. Let's finish it first. Start finishing, stop starting. Now, why can you decide? Because you have not committed for the entire sprint backlog yet. Why? Because you deferred the commitment. You implemented Kanban. You put another column and called it commitment. Sprint plan is a plan, of course. But again, you have to plan. It's a very, dynamic world. So introduce one column. It will help you to address these difficult items also. You have 2 more people, working with you. They can help your team member who is, working on that difficult scope item. High priority ticket came in. Why one person should work on it? Why not 2? You can, because you are still not committed to these sprint backlog items. You have created the buffer and the capacity automatically. You don't need to buffer in the start of the sprint itself. Yeah, our CEO gives us, 2 tickets which are high priority. I should ask, instead of 4 people, we should consider 3.5. What if that 0.5 also got sick and the other 0.5, took some other leave? How will you do it? Decide on the run, put a commitment point. You will be able to handle high priority. You are towards the end of the sprint. You finish all the items you had to do. Start finishing, stop starting. You did not still pick up these 3 backlog items. You still have some bandwidth remaining in the sprint. Your focus is still to complete this in progress. Just with one addition of a column, you are trying to reduce the spillover. You are trying to complete more work. Agree to disagree. A plan prepared 2 to 3 weeks ago is not a commitment. Your sprint backlog cannot be a commitment for you. It is time to, agree on that. Try to commit when there is a demand and the capacity to deliver. You don't have the capacity to deliver these 3 because there were many changes that came into the sprint. You didn't create a wall. It's agile. Solely commit when you can deliver. I'll go to the third topic. Whatever questions that you have, feel free to ask, put them in the chat, and we'll come to those questions soon. Who is this? What's this? Any guesses? Surprise, I call it as a dependency. It can come in any time. It's very scary because you're a Scrum team. When you brought a story into your Scrum, you had a cross-functional team. You knew that the dependencies, whatever dependencies exist, you would be able to, control it because you have planned it better. How come this came in? You completed your PI planning, you had all the time wasted from all those, utilized from so many engineers, technical leads to carve out the dependencies. How come it came in, And you are a Scrum team. You are a cross-functional team. You should be able to self-manage and deliver the value. You may rent services from the experts, and SMEs, in case such a dependency comes in, you'll try and, find out who can help you. And you might think, we can co-train people on this. And next time when such a dependency comes in, our team can do it. You may want to hire SMEs, experts. Looks good. All of this looks good in theory. All very good when you read any of the guides, any of the blogs, any of the people saying that, okay, you should do this and resolve your dependencies. Have you ever thought the other aspect of this coin? What about who will pay these costs? Who will pay this training cost? Training material preparation cost, logistics, loss of revenue incurred because you could not do the work because of this training. People on this dependency, on this SME work. SME renting cost, SME hiring cost, HR coordination, other coordination costs. Who will pay for this? Don't be oblique of these facts. You yourself are a leader, a coach. Whatever improvements that you suggest, you have to understand that company pays your salary. From where will they cut your costs? Your increments. Think how you can create an auto-scaled model. How can you create your system so advanced that it can handle all these dependencies as they come in? There's some glimpse of it, how you can do it. Again, in progress, you can divide the in progress into multiple parts. Like you can say the in progress which are done by self. In progress which require a coordination with other teams, where you are waiting for others. isolate and measure. And this is another topic of the webinar. That is something that we'll see again, that how will you handle dependencies in Scrum or in Kanban, and what is the best way, of handling those dependencies. Who is this? This is a poor product manager. And you ask him or her that he or she should prioritize the sprint backlog in a way that you can maximize the output of the development team 2 weeks in advance, 4 weeks in advance. How? The market is very volatile. If you go to a B2C market, every week there would be a release happening. Every third day there is a release happening. Amazon, Facebook go for an automatic release. Amazon does one release per hour. How can you be planned 2 weeks in advance? And then when you deliver the work and that gets spillover and still it's not done, you blame this guy. Why did he plan it? Why can't he prioritize it correctly? So why do you want to create such a situation? With this commitment point that you introduced, you can also introduce a policy, explicit policy of swapping the sprint backlog items that you did not pick up still. So your current work that is a sprint backlog can become a priority 2. Because some other priority 1 work in the sprint, in the product backlog has come up. And that is something you can swap easily. Because you still did not commit on it. This is the power of deferring commitment. You still did not commit for it. You still could do the valuable work within your sprint. Because your commitment point is not sprint backlog, your commitment point is shifted to do. Now, what are these swapping, priority 1 and priority 2, taking the reverse flow from the sprint backlog to the product backlog? You call them as explicit policies. So they are not based on some biased decision of the product owners or the CEO. These are these are done based on some of the explicit policies. So this is another practice of Kanban, and you can implement this practice of explicit policies by create a reverse flow. If you introduce a commitment point, which is after the sprint backlog, you'll be able to, easily do it. Because there's some work that you have not yet started. So you get multiple types of work. Right? So it may not only be coding, right? Because if you're doing some feature development or the new feature, there could be some technical feasibility or the dev grooming that you might need to do. How will you develop that feature? What is that technical approach? If you're doing a bug fix, you might also want to see, like, how would you solve that bug fix before you actually solve it? Some kind of analysis work is also required. Software development, product development, you directly do not jump to the product development. You will see like how your product is actually can be integrated with the other components of the product. Where do you count that? Within that story? Or do you want to set up a definition of ready so that you can only pull up the work which is coding? Doesn't work. That is why you have a spillover. Your definition of ready fails 50% of the times. Still you want to follow it and it will fail again. So it's not only coding that your people have to do. They have multiple categories of work. For example, if you take a new story or a product development, or a new feature into your sprint, you might want to technically groom it first. You might want to ask your leads to technically groom it. Technical grooming is a separate type of work. Defect fixing is another type of work. Urgent fix is a third type of work. Development of the feature is the fourth type of work. So there are different types of work. Find out. Organize your backlog in a way that you can see what are the different types of work that you have. And again, based on that, you haven't pulled that. Now you can find out which one to pull first. Do you want to pull a feature? Do you want to pull a defect? Do you want to put a configuration change? Do you want to pull a technical debt? What do you want to pull? Let's decide. No, this is sprint. We will do 2 other features, 1 technical debt and 1 urgent fix.
3000 పెట్టి కిందికి లాగా.
Or you may decide any type of work here, because you don't have to do the entire sprint backlog. You are in a position to define the priority yourself. You are a leader yourself. You now have the capability to decide which one is going to create that value. Product owner is not the only person who will create a value for it. You yourself will have to create a value. And for that, you have to commit to what you think is more priority. And that can only be achieved if you defer the commitment. So that is again, type of work. Identifying the type of work is another kind of a Kanban practices, so that you can define you can define the $1 million question. When can you deliver? And why is it needed? You all know about it. So that there are no broken commitments. There is no lost trust. There is no demotivation. There is no loss of business. There is no cost cutting, and not job cuts, no attrition, and no survivability of business. And that is why you want to know when can you deliver. Your standard answer, yeah, we will see if we can deliver in this sprint or not, doesn't work anymore when you look for predictability. This is a very competitive world, my dear. Here you would like to know when you can deliver. You will ask your team as an Agile coach or Scrum master. Your leaders will ask you, what do you think? What will you say? We have 70%, we can deliver. What do you mean by that? Which one? Can you deliver the first 4, the next 4, or the entire sprint backlog? Now, when you introduce this commitment point, you can say whatever we have committed in to do, that is something that we will deliver in 2 weeks. But I'm not sure about the other ones which are sprint backlog. We have to see. And I can tell you what all extra can I deliver in after 3 days as soon as we finish this work. So there are certain measures and metrics in Kanban, that you can follow and apply in Scrum also. For example, you can find out how much time does it take for you from the time you committed, from the time you moved that item into your to-do till the done. And this is something that you can say that this is your predictability in the system. And this is the time that is spent in the sprint backlog. And you can draw such kind of matrix like, time. What is the time spent? You can observe this. What if you get the high priority work? How does your waiting time increase in the sprint backlog? Now it depends upon you from where you want to calculate the commitment point. Is it from the sprint backlog or is it from the first commitment point? I will suggest start from the first commitment point so that you have some kind of stability and predictability in the system. Here the work is waiting. Let it wait. Here also the work is waiting in to do, but it is waiting after you have committed. Because this plan was good enough for you to say that, yeah, these are the ready columns. Ready. You can pick up once you have the capacity to do it. Capacity to do it. And that is why a to-do column here. There is a concept called as service level expectations. It's not SLA, service level agreement. It is a service level expectations, SLE. That is something that you can implement. What does it say? How much time does it take you from the first commitment point, which is here, up till done. And based on that, you manage the flow of work. And you create the lead time distribution chart. Now, for people who have not done KMP, might sound Greek to them, like what is the lead time distribution? How do you measure the due date performance, predictability? And for that, I have one more webinar coming up, what else can be measured? And how actually you can create the lead time distribution. You can join that webinar. I'll show you, how you can read the graphs. What are the graphs that the tools can provide you? If you don't have the tools, how can you use Excel sheets, to draw that graphs, and all of that. And how you can determine this service level expectations with your customers. But for that, you have to introduce a commitment point. You have to defer the commitment in your sprint. You can't call a sprint backlog the entire commitment. Put a to-do column in between so that you can commit to what you have the capacity, what you can deliver. Now wake up. It's a wake up time, because Kanban can help you. So there are multiple ways of doing the work. Waterfall is also a way, it is not wrong. In waterfall, you used to create a plan for 5 weeks, maybe 5 months, a year. For the people who are doing Scrum for 4 weeks, the work is so complex that you can't make a plan for 1 week or 2 weeks. You have to plan 4 days, 4 weeks in advance. For the people who are doing the work for 2 weeks, you have to plan for 2 weeks in advance. But there is one other way, which is not an agile methodology. It is not an agile technique. It is one other way, evolutionary change management method, which is Kanban. You don't implement Kanban, you apply the concepts of Kanban on your existing process. That can be easily done. You just need buy-in with the stakeholders. Today, we discussed how only one column, introduction of one column, can defer your commitment, can improve your spillovers, can help you set up the expectations with your customers, can help you reprioritize the work, can help you manage the dependencies, can help you manage the blockers, can help the pair programming within the team so that you can start finishing and stop starting. Start finishing, stop starting is a lean management concept. And Kanban, this practice of defer commitment can help you do that. So these are the more webinar practices, more webinar topics that we have. What are the best practices to create a Kanban board, overview of the core Kanban matrix, how to determine the SLEs, implementing Kanban in Scrum, how to handle blockers and dependencies in Kanban, and how to take it in Scrum also. So that is something that I'll cover it as a flavor of in these topics. What did you learn today? You learned these 6 general practices of Kanban. Visualize, limit the WIP, manage the flow, make policies explicit, implement feedback loops, and improve collaboratively, evolve experimentally. Not all of them, but you did learn visualization. You introduced a commitment point. You did learn limit WIP because you only committed to what you can do. You did learn manage the flow when you started measuring the lead time. You did learn make policies explicit when you created a reverse flow of your sprint backlog to the product backlog. Just by one point, which is deferring the commitment, introducing a commitment point into your Kanban, into your Scrum, sorry. Yeah. You also learned the change management principles of Kanban. We say start with what you do now. I didn't change anything in Scrum. Scrum is still working as you are working right now. No roles have changed, no responsibilities have changed, no process have changed. You just introduced one process, which is your commitment point. And Scrum is a framework. It's a skeleton. You can introduce the new processes into it. as long as they abide by their ceremonies, the roles, the framework, the entire framework. We didn't do any changes. It's same as it is. You start with what you do now, and then you created a to-do column in between, a commitment point, so that you can decide. You are a leader yourself. You can decide what to pick up, when to pick up.